Hi, I'm Jeannette Sutton,
And I'm Eddie Bertola.
and we welcome you to another episode of The Alerting Authority. And as always, we encourage you to subscribe, follow, listen, and most importantly, participate in these podcasts. We want your questions, concerns, ideas, problems, pain points, success stories, so that we as alerting authorities can better do our jobs and make our communities safer.
And like always, we want to thank our sponsors. HQE has been a great sponsor to this program, and HQE Systems is a disabled, veteran-owned, full-service alert origination software provider. HQE specializes, it's cutting-edge life safety, electronic safety, or security solutions. Um, they have solutions to your pain points, and their system is so unique. We would just encourage everyone to take a look at them. They have the latest generation of outdoor warning sirens, indoor notifications, electronic mass notifications. And again, they control it all in one piece of software. So thank you very much to them for sponsoring this show.
And today we are really happy to invite and host Steve Torrance, who's the Director of Emergency Management for Marin County, California. He serves within the Fire Department's Office of Emergency Management, and in this role, Stephen oversees critical functions including the county's Emergency Operations Center, Alert Marin, Ready Marin programs, disaster planning, and recovery efforts. With over a decade of experience in emergency services, he leads the county's preparedness and response efforts to safeguard the community. Throughout his career, Stephen has managed emergency operations for a wide range of incidents, including wildfires, tsunamis, heat events, civil unrest, infrastructure failures, aircraft incidents, and high-profile events. He holds a master's degree in emergency and disaster management from Georgetown University, and he has completed the prestigious National Preparedness Leadership Initiative at Harvard University, as well as FEMA's National Emergency Management Advanced Academy. In addition to his formal responsibilities, Stephen is a guest lecturer at the Naval Postgraduate School and Georgetown University, sharing his expertise with future leaders in emergency management. Steve, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. I much appreciate you having me on.
I think it's fun just to hear your bio too. A lot of times people think about someone who's, in our field and it's one of those, well, they got their job or they just started, and they kind of just jumped into government service. It really shows you've put a lot of work into where you are currently. And it just shows, I guess your bio screams that. And the fact that you're already giving back and helping others who are starting in this field is really awesome. And I know, so Jeannette shared a bit about the role as Director of Emergency Management for Marin County. And I just want to kind of open it up in the beginning to see, can you tell us some of the key risks or threats that your county specifically faces for those who don't know anything about California, and they may just think California is, one thing, but Marin's unique.
Definitely, Marin County is super unique, not only just in the state of California, but just within the entire United States. We are located on the north side of the Golden Gate Bridge. So just for some perspective for people, we have one of the most unique communities. We have about 70% of our community is protected land. We have federal land, state land, but we also have 11 cities and towns that are right in the Bay Area of Southern California or Northern California. And so, really looking at where we are, we have a commuter population that moves from Marin County to the East Bay in Oakland, to the South Bay down in San Jose, but also we have a lot of community members that drive through our county from Sonoma into San Francisco. And so alerting is one of those things that makes it a challenge because we have so many people moving beyond just our community, but people that are coming to Marin County, as some people call it, it's called the Bay Area's park. People come here to ride their bikes, to go to the beaches, to go to Muir Woods, to see some of the great outdoors that the Bay Area has. Just 30 minutes right outside of San Francisco. And so it's a very unique community to live in. We have an aging population, one of the oldest in the state state of California. And with that, we have all of the hazards that you would imagine: earthquakes, wildfires, floods, tsunamis. We've had two over in the last couple of months. Um, but also we have the traditional things like, power outages and more. And so it's a unique place, but I am so excited to be here and serve this community.
That's so interesting the way you're describing the county as kind of the playground for people who are commuting or vacationing, thinking about all the wineries and such up in your area. So when you think about the biggest challenges that you face with alerts and warnings in Marin, what are what are your strategies to address those challenges, given that you have so many people who are moving through the community? And also you talked about an older population aging in place. And those are significant issues that we don't talk about a lot on the alerting authority. So I'm really curious to hear how you address those things.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest challenges is trying to figure out how do you get alerts to people. We are talking a lot about making sure that we have communications that are going out through wireless emergency alerts, text messages, and also emails and more, and direct phone calls. But what some of the biggest challenges that we run into is we don't have a single population that we can say this is the best way to communicate with our public, because every day it's changing. We have a community out in Western Marin County called Stinson Beach. One of the most beautiful places to vacation, but at the same time, most of the homes out there are vacation rentals, and so on a daily basis, we don't know if there's going to be a person living in that home, where they're from, what language they speak, and so we have that happening throughout the entire county now, where we are having just tons of people that are coming into our community. I don't know who's riding our bike up Mount Tam to see the most one of the most beautiful lookout points in the Bay Area. But in the event of an emergency, we need to be able to notify them. And so we have to take a multi-pronged approach, multi-step, should I say, to be able to say, if I'm doing a wireless emergency alerts, if I'm doing text messages, what kind of things can we do on the front end? And that's really what we're focusing on in our office, is that first mile. What happens in that first mile before an alert is even requested, to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to understand the changing community, but also what are the types of notifications that could be used to notify the person who we don't know is going to be in our community tomorrow.
That's really important. I'm excited to dig in and talk about channels. But I wondered if you could share with us kind of an example of an event that really stands out where you had to think through all these different strategies to help us to really zero in on an example.
Yeah. So December 5th, I believe, December 4th to December 5th of 2024, so Northern California, all the way from the Oregon coast, all the way down to the South Bay, we had a tsunami warning that ended up happening as a result of an earthquake right off the coast. With that, we had a humongous wireless emergency alert that was sent out from the National Tsunami Warning Center, advising of this incident. And for us, that was one of those moments that we knew we had to provide information to everyone in the community of where they were going to be safe and where they were not. That posed a major challenge for us because that was the entire county being alerted. But at the same time, we only had a very small portion of our county that was actually in our inundation areas. And so for that, not only did we learn about the incident at the same time as the public, we also had to let people know, don't panic if you're all the way on Mount Tam, which is, for for perspective, 2,000 feet up in the sky and one of the safest areas for a tsunami. Um, but also making sure that people that were not as tech proficient, who were new to our community, and also got that tsunami warning, how could they get more information? And so with that, we had to share things on social media. We had to share things through phone calls, text message, to make sure that not only were we telling people where they were going to be safe, but also having maps at the ready to say, click here for more information on where the inundation zone is. That was definitely a challenge for us because as people are driving through the community, they don't know exactly where the tsunami inundation zone ends and begins. But it became one of those moments where it shined a silver lining on the situation by us saying, we know that we have our tools ready to go. So when they are used, we can make sure that people have not only the proper terminology, but they also know, with a visual of where to go, where not to be in those situations.
That's great. And did you happen to leverage partnerships with other counties during this as well?
Luckily, our duty officers in the Bay Area are fairly connected, and so with us sharing the bridge with the city and county of San Francisco during the incident, I know every jurisdiction was just completely bombarded by the actual incident. So during that time, we didn't necessarily have as much coordination during the incident, but I want to stress the work that was done before the incident. We know what type of systems are in place in our surrounding counties, so in the event that we do have something like this happen, we generally know what city and county of San Francisco is going to do. We generally know what Sonoma County is going to do, and it's those partnerships which allow for us to not necessarily need that incident coordination in the middle of the chaos because we already know what their plans are going to be. And so after we had tons of coordination, confirmed things that worked, and we made sure that we were on the same page. And also, there was some areas for improvement that we also had with all of the counties in the Bay Area.
That's great. One of our upcoming podcast guests will be from the Tsunami Warning Center to talk about tsunami warnings from end to end. And they're really challenging, as you were just describing. And at the federal level, they're challenging as well, especially the coordination with the locals. And so it's so great to hear about the ongoing work across the Bay Area counties and thinking about how to better coordinate messaging around that kind of an event, which is so infrequent and yet very obviously, as you were describing, really um, potentially devastating. And at the same time, the whole county was warned, which is an unusual kind of a thing for wireless emergency alerts. And yet that's the way the tsunami system works. So we'll be talking about that a lot more later in a future podcast.
I have to say too, bravo for taking the reins. So when you got the tsunami alert, and this is something we talk about, is no national entity can replace local knowledge, can replace local experience, which kind of goes to my question that I have next for you is we do spend a lot of time on the show talking about research, and research is super important. What's nice is you not only follow that, um, but you're an actual user, a practitioner, someone who has to connect the dots between the research and the current state of whatever we are. And so to dig into the weeds just a little bit, um, how important, because we're talking about communities and knowing your communities, because you can know a tool or you know a trend, but you have to know your community themselves. And you spoke about it, how there's vacation homes and other things in different parts, and it's that type of local knowledge. So how important is it for you, and I'm going to put this out there for people in your position, to really know their community and not just the geography, but the different types of populations?
It is the number one thing you can do. When it comes down to my philosophy, I've always told myself, the team that I support, is get out of your office. This box here has a nice view. I know for many people can't see that, but it's easy to sit behind my desk and try to pull information in to make better decisions. But that does not replace getting out and actually talking to the community, going out to the local library, going out and doing these small events in coffee places across the county, and hearing what actually happens. We haven't perfected it just yet, but it's one of those moments where we go out to some community events and taking a lot of the research that's happening with the warm room, but also looking at the betterment of our office is just going out and asking people, if you saw this alert, what would it mean to you? And we start getting real face-to-face conversations with people, and they go, I actually don't know what that means. For example, we have a tsunami warning and evacuation warning. The word warning is used in two different ways. And we expect the community to learn that, to understand that. But at the same time, we'll never know that unless we go out and actually ask people. And so, for us, we have the Ready Marin program and the Alert Marin program where we have our staff going out in the community, having small community meetings with people, and also making it so people actually will show up. 90 minutes. I know that's the line that people are going to say that, hey, that's where I'll go to that event. But 90 minutes, you're going to get some real knowledge. You're going to get hands-on training. You're going to learn about our program, but also gives us an opportunity to hear back from the public and get that feedback loop. Um, for us, really just trying to understand more and more, going out into our community, the community in West Marin, super agricultural based. A lot of people that have been there for decades, for multi generations that have been out there. There's a completely different way of life out there. However, down in Stinson Beach, that community is changing every single day. We have towns in Fairfax that are super small, where people, are completely different than you would imagine in the town of Novato. And we're just in this small community, 250,000 people, but almost 250,000 different ways that people perceive Marin County, let alone emergencies that happen here in the community. And so for us, we have to get out. We have to start talking with people. We can't be behind the scenes. And I know everyone loves to say that emergency management is behind the scenes, but we have to figure out a way to get from behind the scenes to show what we do, why we do it, and then hear from the community to figure out how we can make it better for them.
I love it. And I mean, I got to brag about you just a little bit because I'm a fan of Marin County. It is one of my favorite places to visit for all the reasons that you've said. But you, in the way that you are reaching out to your community and the ways that you disseminate information, you've mentioned a few. I want to just highlight it because there are those sometimes in our field and those that just critique our field who think, well, you're going to send out, the information in one method and you're done. And you've already highlighted some of those. And I want to know, can you dive in just a little bit to talk about some of the different dissemination methods that you do use in order to reach all the different people?
Yeah, I mean, we generally use as many tools as possible during an emergency, and so first and foremost, we have our Alert Marine program, which is our branded tool for our branded program. But what we use that system for is all of our opt-in systems. In addition to that, we have it is a countywide program that we share amongst all 11 cities and towns within our county, the special districts as well. That way, we have a single source of truth, but also we have an ability for all of those agencies to build on the program that we have here. That's a text message, email, and phone call for those opt-ins. We also have in California, we have a state law that requires our select utilities to provide us with emergency data. And so, in the event that we don't know who that person is staying in the vacation rental, we generally have that phone number for that vacation rental within our system. And so, we can send out calls that way, but also moving all the way up into the wireless emergency alerts, EAS as well. And we're looking and trying to figure out how we can expand that. We want to be able to meet people where they are. So, for example, right now, our county, there are a number of jurisdictions that have sirens within our county, where they actually are speech enabled, where they can go out and share a message through those platforms as well. However, those are not all the way throughout our county. As I mentioned, we have about 70%, which is protected land. It's harder for us to put sirens in those communities because they're not necessarily county-owned parcels and/or land. But we're trying to figure out how do we alert the person who's riding a bike up Mount Tam or in the community where we know that there's no cell phone service, but there's more wildfire prone areas. We are still those are gaps that we are aware of, but the research that we've been tasked with doing within our shop is to make sure that we can start coming up with solutions, so we can start expanding those.
I love it. And I know we hit research again. And you talked about the Warren Room. Jeanette, can I ask you just to briefly share what that is again and
Gosh,
just to reference it?
sure. Yeah. And thanks, Steve, for using the resources that are there. The Warren Room was created to translate the science into really easily digested practical insights. And so it started a few years ago where I took the wireless emergency alerts from PBS Warn and evaluated them based upon the criteria that the research has said this makes a warning effective, or it's the one that will help to reduce people's information seeking before they take action. And so by showing emergency managers how to improve their messages in that kind of editorial way, it helps them to improve their own strategies on a daily basis. And the messages that go out over PBS Warn are visible to anyone. So it's a public database, and I make use of that public database to demonstrate how to make improvements. The Warn Room is also doing some other things right now, like we do a lot of training and working towards building a boot camp for people to design their critical messages in a really short period of time. And so practitioners can make use of all of those resources. They're freely available, and they're funded entirely by research that has been federally funded research.
Well,
One thing I do want to add, beyond just and I totally forgot about this, but one of the things that we started doing was recognizing those text messages, emails, phone calls only go so far. I spoke to the older community in our county, but also the younger community who receives messages and information a whole different way. And so one of the things that we're also tapping into is social media platforms like Nextdoor, and trying to use the alerting features that come with some of these apps, because we know that people are going to Nextdoor to figure out what's going on with the incident. So why not actually put our information there as well? And they also have these alerting features as well. So being able to take our message, add it on to Nextdoor, that way we can not necessarily control the narrative, but make sure the narrative is actually proliferated amongst all of the channels that we know people are using. So, that's where we want to take that research-based method, but also combine it with the local knowledge that we have. Nextdoor is where things grow. That's where the conversations are. So if you're not signed up for Alert Marin, why not put it in Nextdoor and allow for people to track what's going on in those channels as well?
That's so important. 2 decades ago, it was Facebook where you put everything. And then for a while, Twitter was the location for active and unfolding events. And um, now that it's competing with Blue Sky and Instagram and YouTube and Threads and all the other things. And so your ability to keep your finger on the pulse of knowing where your community goes to for information is so, so important. How did you figure out that Nextdoor was the place that people were spending their time?
Honestly, we have within our operation, we have a public information officer, and then we have our preparedness coordinator. Both of them are the most two forward-facing positions in our division, and they are actually going out and doing the face-to-face conversations with people and having blue sky day conversations and learning about where our community is. We've looked at Instagram and we see that we have, I believe we've doubled our department's Instagram following. However, it is nothing compared to Nextdoor. And so being able to realize that we have this following here, but at the same time, the community is also somewhere else. That took having a PIO who understood the community, a community-facing preparedness coordinator that is in the community, bringing that information back and saying, yes, you guys are doing a good job, but you actually need to be putting the message here.
Mhm. Yeah, that's
well,
great.
I mean, you don't just have experience in Marin County, right? You have a lot of experience, and I know you follow things that are happening um, within your state, within your area, and nationally. So to get your opinion, because I really value it, it's as we look at ways to effectively let people know what's happening, and we've never had a time with more technology that we've had access to. We still face a lot of pretty big gaps and challenges. Um, what do you think some of the biggest gaps, like nationally, as you look around that you're seeing? And do you have any, suggestions for Because the idea is we have people listening in the show, right, who are in different stages. Where do you see some of those big gaps, and what would be your specific encouragement or suggestions?
Yeah, I so there were two gaps that we've kind of leaned into within our organization, and the first one, as I've kind of mentioned, is that first mile. Um, there are a lot of things that need to happen before an alert even is requested. And I'll now hone in on one example is um, our first responders are out in the field dealing with a lot of things. And a lot of people just assume that that alert gets into your duty officer or whoever that person is that's going to be logging in and pushing that button and drafting that message. But there's so much that goes into that fire official, that law enforcement official, understanding what's going on in the field in order to expedite that into that duty officer to hit that button. And so what we've looked at is that first mile response, and it somewhat goes into that bystander apathy type moment, where if no one calls 911, you don't expect the fire truck to actually start coming through or things of that nature. And that's almost the same thing that we have in alert and warning. There are some things that we can forecast, but evacuation notices don't go out unless that person calls in and or that dispatcher relays that information. And so we need to make sure that we're spending the same amount of time training up our first responders, our dispatchers on these tools to say, in the event that you need an evacuation, here's all the information I need up front. Because here's the source that here's the action I need people to take. Here's where they're going to be getting more information. All of those things that the research says are the best things for us to be able to get people to take action. I need that part of my training. And so that is definitely a gap that I've seen throughout my entire career is we need to be doing more face-to-face training with our first responders so they understand what these tools are. A lot of times you'll hear people just say, yeah, send the alert. Uh, what does that mean? Where do you want that to go? Who is your audience? Um, for example, in Marin County, we do a lot of prescribed burns. And people are saying, hey, we're having all these people call 911. How do we stop them from calling 911 when it's just a prescribed fire? And they'll say, send out a text message. And I have to, unfortunately, have those real face-to-face conversations where I go, that text message is not going to hit the person who's driving from Sonoma to San Francisco on Highway 101. That's not the best way. And so, what are those alternatives? But also making sure they understand how all of our alerting systems work, and the best way to get in contact with that specific audience member that you're trying to reach. So, training is, with our first responders is where I would definitely say is the gap. We don't necessarily talk about that in multiple spaces because generally, I think the public thinks that, firefighter in the field is the one that's hitting the button. Um, and there's like, oh, well, why did it take so long? Well, we have to get this information. Um, the second piece is the technology. Uh, Truly, we have technology moving. Um, Eddie, to your point, we have more technology today than we've ever had. And with AI, it's going exponentially faster every single day. However, we also have these moments where, the mega organizations like Apple and Google and all these cell phone companies are consistently adding layers to their phone for cybersecurity, for spam detection and things of that nature. And we're also sending our emergency alerts or notifications through those same channels. And so things can break. Things are changing every day. Like, for example, we recognize that there's a spam filter that might be blocking certain phone numbers. Um, but also, people changing their home Wi-Fi from from a landline to a Wi-Fi base. How does that impact someone receiving a wireless emergency alert on their cell phone if they're now on Wi-Fi? We've started realizing that, oh, how are we going to actually close that gap? And so the technology is moving. We need to make sure that the information is there to inform the public of that technology shift. But also, we need to be aware of it as we start looking at our programs and what shifts do we need to make to adjust to the new technology. So those are truly those two major things their gaps or challenges that we've seen in alert and warning, but they're only going to continue to get more challenging. But I think we also have access to the resources and information to help overcome those.
Yeah, those are definitely the challenges that we've heard other emergency managers also talking about, especially with the training component and how challenging it is to get a really well-constructed alert written, approved, and out the door over the right channels in a timely manner. And if you haven't spent the time thinking through that process ahead of time or helping people to know what information you need in order to write that effective alert, it slows everything down as it moves down the chain. Um, I wanted to ask you something that I think I remember you talking about when we met at the Bay Area Urban Area Security Initiative Summit. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you talked about wanting to see alert and warning professionalization differently. And can you tell us a little bit about what you meant and what your vision is for alerts and warnings in that kind of a structure?
Yeah, I know it's probably an unpopular opinion, but really looking at alert and warning, it's something that has fallen into emergency management because we do it well. We have that response enabled structure within our organization where we know that something needs to get done and we can do it in an effective way. But I also have to ask myself, at what point did emergency management become the alerters? The person that is being tasked with understanding how to communicate with all these different systems, doing emergency alerts. And are these things different than running an emergency operations center? Um, and for me, I've kind of looked and said we need to make sure that this is professionalized, just so it is not no longer just other duties as assigned. Do emergency managers have the skill sets and the expertise to do it? Yes, they do. However, if we want to make sure that that we're allowing for emergency alerting to be done the best way possible, it needs to be something that comes from behind the scenes of emergency management, which is already behind the scenes. And so with that, making sure that we can put alerting on the pedestal that it needs to be, to say, this is what emergency alerting is. This is where it's a fundamental profession amongst its own. That yes, it can be linked with dispatching and emergency management. All these different functions coming together to help with the consolidated public safety response. But if we want to make sure it's done the right way, we have to make sure that we're dedicating the time and the resources to it. For us, I've seen throughout my entire career, I've never seen, a standalone department or division that is tasked with doing emergency alerting. It's always been something that's slowly coming together. There are some agencies that I believe are starting to do it a lot better. I'll call out my partners in Contra Costa County that have their community alert and warning program. But you're starting to see that it is becoming more professionalized day in and day out. But we just need to continuously go through and say it needs to be a standalone program so people can see the funding that needs to go into it. And also, it's no longer just the other duties as assigned for many people that are already underwater.
Hmm. I love that idea. But I spend so much time thinking about this as a research area and as a key function, which has been in emergency management. Um, one of the my follow-up questions for you is, what's the role of the PIO in relation to alert and warning? Because sometimes I hear PIOs talking about being the ones issuing alerts. It seems to me it's a very different function that they fill.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we have a public information officer in our office of emergency management, um, and she's 100% involved with all of our emergency alerts. So she's on our duty officer teams channel. So before anything even goes out, she's aware of it. It helps not only with making sure that the message is crafted a certain way, but also it helps us when it comes down to all the post-incident messaging that's needed. As we're typically sending out 360 characters and people are looking for more information. That public information officer for our team can go through and start building that out in real time. But also, there's a lot of jargon as whether it's in the research base, in the research, but also where everyone might be just kind of have those blinders on. those public information officers help take those blinders off and say, hey, that's not what the public needs to hear right now, or let's rephrase it so it's said a different way. And so our public information officer, she's been tasked with working with one of our coordinators who also drafted all 90 plus templates that we have for our emergency alerts to make sure that our emergency alert templates match our public emergency communications annex. That way that there's more intersection, but between our public information officer and our alerting team. That way they see each other's vantage point, but they can also work together to help improve not only our public information, but our emergency alerts to, make those little tweaks of, hey, yes, all of this was, we ran this through the MDD, and we did it this way and we did it this way. However, this was that moment that we saw on Nextdoor where people are saying they did not completely get it. That way we can make those changes. We can improve the templates as we continue to build up just the way we do alerting in our county.
That's fantastic. How long did it take your coordinator to write 90 templated messages?
Luckily, we did use some AI to help get us started. So I want to say it took us just about 6 months to go through. Not only did we do the 360 character, but we did our 90 character messages. The reason it's taken us such a long time is because we also wanted to make sure everything was translated into multiple languages, and so. We also have Spanish that has been done for all of those 90 messages, with our goal to be having a minimum of 5 different languages in our county ready to go.
Wow. It's a huge undertaking. Congratulations for getting that done.
It is a huge undertaking. Like I said, we're at Spanish, and we're going to continue to move through to make sure that we have those top 5 languages ready to go.
I tell you, I think this is a good time for Jeannette and I to officially apologize to Marin County officials, to those residents in Marin County, because Stephen is about to get 1,000 job opportunities once people hear what he has done in Marin County, because I know in some other larger jurisdictions, they are nowhere close. They're trying and they're trying to identify, but truly props to you in Marin County. I am sorry. Please let me in. I still want to go to Muir Woods and everything else that I like to do there.
I,
But I
I,
got
I,
to put you on one more time, Stephen,
I
for a question on the
definitely.
future, because if you have so many amazing ideas and that vision, and I think we've talked offline, where you're gonna go with the county. And obviously there's always a lot between, hey, this is where we're gonna go and to actually get there. But what is your vision of where you see where you control, right? Where Marin is, the alerts, the warnings, the capabilities. If you were to look 10 years out and be like, where are we headed? Because a vision is just as important, right, as what you're doing today. So that way you have that direction. So where is Marin going to be?
You know, I think there is the first thing that I'll speak to is not necessarily on the technology, but it is an organization that has the ability to alert everyone in their preferred language. That is truly my vision in the next 10 years. I don't want us to be in a space where we're having to just in 2026 just get to being able to do Spanish translation for all 90 templates. The technology is there, but I want to make sure that if you are driving through our county and you speak Tagalog or you speak French as your preferred language, and you may not know what a tsunami is. There's people, and that's one of the things we learned with our tsunami notifications. There's a lot of people that came to our county that actually had no clue what a tsunami was. But, being able to send an alert to someone and they get it on their preferred device or a device that is, whether it's their car, whether it's their refrigerator, because it's a smart enabled tool. And I know a lot of the programs that are being developed are starting to enable WEA compliant software. Um, I want to be able to make sure that we are sending not only a message to their preferred device, but in their preferred language. One of the moments, and going back to our PIO, she actually And I'll throw her name out there, Madi Ochoa. She really went through in one of our community sessions about 2 years ago, and she started speaking in Spanish. And in the room where it was a predominantly English group, and she told people to take an action in Spanish first, and everyone that understood Spanish started taking that action. And then she started speaking in English after. And after that, people were like, "Oh, wait, I didn't like not knowing at the same time as the other group." And it was one of those super impactful moments, not only for me, but you could see through everyone across the room that the timeliness of an alert getting to someone mattered, and in their preferred language. And that's what we unfortunately are doing right now, where we send out an emergency alert. It'll be in English first, maybe Spanish second, maybe Chinese third. All of those are times. Those timestamps are things that people are waiting to hear their language. And so honestly, that is my true goal, is to get people alerted and the tools and their preferred language as quick as possible. And I think in that 10 years, we can actually do that. Especially now with technology growing to the point where, as I mentioned, WEA is not something that just hits your cell phone. It can hit your refrigerator. I hope it can hit your car. I hope it can hit your coffee maker. Whatever that thing is that is internet connected, it can set off a tone. Or when you're watching, your favorite streaming app, whatever it is, it can pop up there with that same message. I think we have the tools and the resources to get there even before 10 years. It's just a matter of being able to collectively get everyone on board to make it happen.
That's really exciting. And the possibility of getting an alert to people in all the different forms is it's a real dream. And I hope that as those dreams become realized that the people who are pushing the button to send the message to the coffee maker are also following your lead and getting really good templates written ahead of time, so that the message that arrives is something that people understand. And you've done that initial training so people understand why their coffee maker is going off when it hasn't been programmed to do so. There's so much public education that needs to go along with the training in order to integrate it with those technological solutions that you're talking about. But how exciting to think about what's the future. So I don't think we had any other questions for you, Steve, but do you have anything you want to talk about that we didn't ask you about?
We've learned so much over the last, I think the iPhone, they pushed out an update that started blocking a lot of our phone numbers. Um,
Oh.
and so now you're starting to see more and more people are like, I didn't get the alert, but because it went to their spam because they didn't have it as a saved contact. And a lot of, uh, with good intention, I want to say it's just iPhones. If it's not a saved contact, it'll go to your spam. Well, how many people have saved the Alert Marin phone number in their cell phone? And so now that turns into a campaign for us to be able to say, you need to make sure that you're doing this, but also how many people sleep with their phone on do not disturb. And so it becomes it becomes a pretty big challenge for us. So um, we if you all want to, we don't need to. We also did have on the 4th, we had two WEAs that were sent out because we had a 911 outage. And there's this weird juxtaposition of we sent out the WEA at about 9 o'clock at night. The next morning, we got so many complaints about sending out a WEA at 9 o'clock at night. And everyone's like, well, why did you need to tell us that 911 was out? And we're like, if you had the heart attack at 11 o'clock, you would have hoped that we told you that 911 was out. And so it became one of those that our public information officer really got involved with having to write the post-incident narrative of why we do this and why we use these tools in those settings. And so it's definitely a challenge when people don't necessarily see the intent behind it. But when the tool is there and the tool is used the right way, people do appreciate it. Because we did have two people go to our hospital, or excuse me, our fire stations, which was part of the direction that we gave in our second WEA.
Yeah. Well,
Awesome.
Steve, thanks for joining us today. This has been a really great conversation. I'm really happy to have learned so much about Marin and thinking about my own trip to go visit Mount Tam and the beautiful parts of your county. So appreciate your time today and thanks for sharing all of your knowledge.
Thank you very much for having me, and much appreciate. I like to say, come to the Bay Area Park. There's tons of places to eat and enjoy the good weather that Marin has to offer.
Well, and then just big thanks for representing all the practitioners too out there. So keep working. And I mean, I know it's a struggle and a grind, so keep going.
Thank you. And I do want to shout out my team. They are the ones that put together all of those templates. They've been doing all the heavy lifting. They are the ones that looked at the research, built the templates, came up with all of the different scenarios. And so, as much as I appreciate all the kind and warm regards, I couldn't do it without the amazing people that are on the team that are really doing the legwork.
Yeah. All right. Thanks to your team for doing all that hard work. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
All right.
Thanks so much, Steve. We'll talk to you soon.